The diamond ring on her finger wasn't hers. The blood on the silk sheets wasn't explained. And the dangerously beautiful man standing in the doorway with eyes like black fire just said 5 words that stopped her heart cold. "You belong to me now." Nyla's hands trembled as she stared at the massive stone, her head pounding, memories of last night shattered into terrifying fragments. Champagne that tasted wrong. A stranger's hands. A van door opening to swallow her whole. "I don't even know you," she whispered, backing against the headboard. He moved closer, calm and lethal, like a predator who'd already won. "Han Jae-hyuk, and last night, I saved you from a trafficking ring seconds before you disappeared forever." His voice dropped, deadly soft. "But saving you meant claiming you. That ring tells every criminal in South Korea you're mine. And the people who tried to take you?" He paused at the foot of the bed, something dark and possessive burning in his gaze. "They're coming back to finish what they started. So you have 2 choices, Nyla Brooks. Stay here under my protection and survive. Or walk out that door and be dead within a week." Her breath caught. "You're insane." "No." The ghost of a smile touched his lips, beautiful and terrifying. "I'm the only reason you're still breathing. And whether you hate me or not, you're about to find out exactly what it means to wear a MAFIA boss's ring." Outside, engines roared to life. Gunfire cracked in the distance. His phone buzzed. One glance at the screen, and his entire expression changed to something that made her blood run cold. "They're already here. Welcome back, besties. This story is about to take you on a journey so intense, so full of passion and unexpected turns, that you won't be able to look away. Trust me, the twists will catch you completely off guard. If you're ready, tap the like button, get comfortable, and don't forget to subscribe and help get this channel to 1,000 subscribers. Your support truly means everything to me. Let's get into this story." The ceiling was wrong. That was Nyla's first coherent thought as consciousness dragged her back from the void. Not her ceiling, not her apartment. The surface above her was ornate, carved wood, painted in deep charcoal, with gold leaf accents that caught the dim light filtering through heavy curtains. A chandelier hung in the center, crystal teardrops refracting pale morning sun into fractured rainbows across silk sheets that felt too smooth, too expensive, too unfamiliar against her skin. Her head throbbed with a violence that made thinking difficult. Nyla pressed her palms against her temples and tried to piece together the night before. There had been a gallery opening in Hyundai, networking with other designers, champagne that tasted slightly bitter, a stranger who kept refilling her glass. After that, everything dissolved into fragments. Flashing lights, a car door opening, hands that weren't hers guiding her, somewhere she didn't choose to go. She sat up too quickly, and nausea rolled through her stomach. The room spun once before settling into focus. This wasn't a hotel. The space was too personal, decorated with intention rather than corporate neutrality. Dark wooden furniture, shelves lined with books in Korean and English, a vinyl record player on a side table. Through the gap in the curtains, she could see manicured gardens and high stone walls, topped with security cameras. Then she noticed her hand. A diamond ring sat on her left ring finger, the stone so large it seemed obscene. Princess cut, flawless clarity, set in platinum with smaller stones circling the band. Nyla stared at it, like it might disappear if she blinked hard enough. She tried to pull it off, but her fingers were slightly swollen, and the ring wouldn't budge past her knuckle. Panic arrived then, sharp and breathless. She threw back the covers, and her heart stopped. Blood. Not much, just a small stain on the white, sheets near where her body had been. Her dress from last night was gone, replaced by an oversized silk shirt that smelled like sandalwood and something darker, more masculine. She checked herself frantically, searching for injuries, but found nothing except bruises on her upper arms that looked like fingerprints. The door opened without warning. Nyla grabbed the nearest object, a heavy book from the nightstand, and held it like a weapon. The man who entered moved with the kind of calm that came from never being afraid. He was tall, dressed in black slacks and a crisp white shirt, with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms marked with ink she couldn't quite make out. His face was striking in a way that made her breath catch, despite the terror. Sharp features softened only slightly by full lips and eyes so dark they looked black in the dim light. His hair was pushed back from his face, still damp like he'd recently showered. He stopped when he saw her defensive stance, hands raised slightly in a gesture that might have been reassuring if his entire presence wasn't so threatening. "You're awake," he said in English, his accent precise and controlled. "Good. We need to talk." "Stay back." Nyla's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I don't know who you are or what happened last night, but I'm leaving right now." "You can't." 2 words, delivered with such finality that they landed like a physical barrier between her and the door. "Watch me." She moved toward the exit, but he shifted position, not blocking her path exactly, but making it clear he could. If needed, up close, she could see the exhaustion around his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way his gaze tracked her movements like he was calculating 12 different outcomes. "My name is Han Jae-hyuk," he said. "Last night you were drugged at the gallery opening in Haeundae. The man who did it works for a trafficking network that moves women across the Pacific. You were minutes away from being transported to a cargo ship when my people intercepted." The words hit her like ice water. Nyla's grip on the book tightened. "You're lying." "I wish I was." He pulled out his phone and turned the screen toward her. Security footage showed her stumbling through a parking garage, a man in a server's uniform supporting her weight, leading her toward a white van. The timestamp read 3:47 in the morning. "We've been tracking this operation for months. You weren't the target. You were simply available." Nyla felt her knees weaken. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed, the book slipping from her fingers. "The blood. You fought back when they tried to move you into the vehicle, cut your arm on the doorframe." He gestured to her left forearm, where she now noticed a bandage she'd missed in her panic. "The ring belonged to my mother. Putting it on your finger was the fastest way to make certain people believe you were under my protection. In this world, that symbol means something." What world? But even as she asked, Nyla was beginning to understand. The fortress walls, the security, the way he spoke about trafficking networks like he had personal knowledge of their operations. "Who are you really?" Jae-hyuk's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Someone you should be afraid of, but not today." The answer made her skin crawl, and her pulse race in a way that had nothing to do with fear alone. Before she could respond, another voice called from somewhere beyond the door, an older woman speaking rapid Korean. Jae-hyuk answered in the same language, his tone shifting to something almost gentle. Mrs. Kang is bringing breakfast, he told Nyla. You need to eat, and then we'll discuss what happens next. What happens next is I leave. And go where? His question was quiet, almost kind, which somehow made it worse. Back to your apartment where they now know you live? Back to your routine where they can find you. Again? The people who tried to take you don't stop because they failed once. They adapt. They wait. They try again. An elderly woman entered carrying a tray, her weathered face breaking into a warm smile when she saw Nyla awake. She spoke in Korean, setting down the tray with care, then reached out and patted Nyla's hand with surprising affection before leaving as quickly as she'd arrived. She says you have a strong spirit, Jae-hyuk translated. That you'll survive this. This? Nyla looked at the ring again, at the opulent room, at the man who claimed to be her savior while also being her captor. What exactly is this? Temporary. He moved toward the door, giving her space. Eat, rest. When you're ready, I'll explain everything. But understand this, Nyla Brooks. You're safe here. Safer than you've been since the moment you accepted that first drink last night. He knew her name. He knew where she lived. He knew things he shouldn't know, and that realization made her chest tighten with fresh anxiety. How long am I staying here? She asked. Jae-hyuk paused in the doorway, his profile sharp against the light from the hallway. As long as it takes to eliminate the threat. And if I refuse, then you'll die within a week. He said it without drama, without emphasis, just cold assessment. They've already marked you. My involvement has only made you more valuable as a target. The ring makes you untouchable to most, but the Beck cartel doesn't respect traditional boundaries. If you walk out of here, they'll take it as proof that my protection means nothing. They'll make an example of you to weaken my position. Nyla wanted to scream. Instead, she asked, What kind of man are you? For the first time, something like emotion crossed his face, the kind your mother warned you about. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click that sounded impossibly loud in the sudden silence. Nyla stared at the breakfast tray without seeing it, her mind racing through impossible scenarios. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand, where someone had thoughtfully left it charging. 23 missed calls from friends, 14 texts asking where she was, 3 from her roommate growing increasingly worried. Before she could respond to any of them, a new message appeared from an unknown number. Don't contact anyone. Not yet. They're watching your connections. I'll explain when you're ready to hear it. The number wasn't saved, but somehow she knew it was him. Jae-hyuk, the man who claimed to be protecting her while simultaneously holding her prisoner. Nyla threw the phone onto the bed and pressed her fists against her eyes, trying to stop the tears of frustration and fear that threatened to spill over. The food smelled incredible despite everything. Rice porridge with ginger, grilled fish, pickled vegetables, fresh fruit cut into perfect sections. Her stomach growled traitorously. She hadn't eaten since lunch yesterday, before the Sasha gallery opening that had somehow ended with her waking in a crime lord's bed wearing a dead woman's ring. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, her mind churning through her options. Running seemed suicidal, based on what Jae-hyuk had told her. Staying felt like surrender. Calling the police meant explaining how she ended up here, meant potentially exposing herself to the very people who'd tried to take her if there were corrupt officers involved. Everything was impossible. After breakfast, Nyla explored the room more carefully. Her purse sat on a chair, contents apparently untouched. Her wallet, keys, makeup, everything accounted for. The clothes she'd worn last night hung in the closet, cleaned and pressed. In the attached bathroom, she found luxury toiletries, towels so soft they felt like clouds, and a shower with enough water pressure to strip paint. She showered until her skin turned red, scrubbing away the feeling of violation, even though logically she knew Jae-hyuk hadn't touched her that way. The bandage on her arm was waterproof. When she peeled it back, she found a clean cut, professionally stitched, already beginning to heal. Someone had treated her injuries with care. The closet held more than just her dress. An entire section contained women's clothing in exactly her size, tags still attached, designer labels she recognized from window shopping she could never afford. Jeans, blouses, dresses both casual and formal, undergarments still in packaging. Someone had anticipated her staying here long enough to need a wardrobe. She chose simple black jeans and a soft gray sweater, refusing to wear anything too expensive or too revealing. When she emerged from the bedroom finally, a young man in a dark suit stood in the hallway, his expression professionally neutral. "Miss Brooks," he said in accented English. "Mr. Han asked me to show you around when you were ready. My name is Min Jun." Am I allowed to refuse? Something that might have been. Sympathy flickered across his face. You're not a prisoner, but you are protected. There's a difference. Nyla wasn't sure she believed that, but she followed him anyway. The house was massive, a strange blend of traditional Korean architecture and modern luxury. Hardwood floors, paper screen doors, but also marble countertops and security panels on every wall. As they walked, Min Jun pointed out the kitchen, the library, the gym, the indoor pool. Each room was more elaborate than the last. "Mr. Han wants you to be comfortable," Min Jun said. "Anything you need, just ask." "I need to leave." He didn't respond to that, just continued the tour. They passed several other men in suits, all of them nodding respectfully to her, all of them carrying themselves with the alertness of trained security. Or trained killers, possibly both. The tour ended in a sunroom, overlooking the gardens. Jae-hyuk sat at a small table with papers spread before him, reading glasses perched on his nose, looking almost normal except for the gun holstered at his hip and the two guards stationed by the doors. He glanced up when she entered, removing the glasses with deliberate care. "Better?" he asked. "No." Nyla crossed her arms, maintaining distance. "I want answers, real ones." Jae-hyuk dismissed Min Jun with a gesture, waited until they were alone except for the distant guards, then leaned back in his chair. "Ask. Who are you?" "I already told you my name." "Your real occupation." He considered her for a long moment, and Nyla had the unsettling sense he was deciding how much truth she could handle. "I manage certain business operations that exist outside legal frameworks. Protection services, information brokering, weapons consultation. I ensure that people who can't go to the police still have recourse when threatened." "You're a criminal." "Yes. No hesitation, no justification. I inherited this position from my father, who inherited it from his father. In my world, there are rules older than law and consequences more immediate than prison." Nyla's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. "And the people who tried to take me?" "The Beck cartel. They run trafficking operations through 6 countries, moving women, children, organs, whatever generates profit. They've been trying to expand into territory I control. Taking you was likely opportunistic, but my intervention has made it personal. So I'm leverage. That's why you put this ring on me. She held up her hand. To claim me. To protect you. Jae Hyuk's voice hardened. That ring tells everyone in this city that harming you means declaring war on me. Most organizations won't risk that. The Bayek cartel is not most organizations. Take it off then. Let me disappear. I'll leave Korea entirely. They have your face, your name, your passport information. Running makes you easier to track, not harder. He stood, moving to the windows, his reflection ghostly in the glass. Understand your anger. I'd feel the same. But whether you believe me or not, keeping you here is the only reason you're still breathing. The certainty in his voice made her want to scream or cry or both. Instead, she asked, "How long?" "Until we eliminate the threat or negotiate a truce. Weeks, possibly months." "Months?" The word came out strangled. "I have a life, a job, friends who'll worry. Your job has been told you're dealing with a family emergency. Your friends think you've gone home to the States for a few weeks. Your apartment is being monitored by my people. Everything you left behind is safe." The presumption of it stole her breath. He'd rearranged her entire existence without permission, making decisions that should have been hers. "You have no right." "I have every right." Jae Hyuk turned from the window, and the intensity in his gaze pinned her in place. "The moment they drugged you, the moment they put their hands on you, this became my business. In my world, there are debts that must be paid in blood. They touched something I decided to protect. That decision is final." Heat flooded through her, anger, and something else she didn't want to name. "I'm not a thing." "No." He moved closer, and Nyla forced herself not to retreat. "You're a brilliant designer who came to Korea to build something new. You're brave enough to start over in a foreign country alone. You're strong enough to fight back even when drugged. You're valuable in ways that have nothing to do with my world." The unexpected praise disarmed her more than threats could have. Nyla swallowed hard. "Then treat me like a person, not a possession. I am treating you like someone worth protecting, which in my experience is far more rare." Jae Hyuk stopped just outside her personal space, close enough that she could see gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Tell me what you need to feel less trapped." The question surprised her. Nyla thought quickly, testing boundaries. "My laptop. My design software. I need to work, or I'll lose my mind." "Done." "What else?" "Communication with my family. Not about where I am, but so they know I'm okay." "I'll arrange secure video calls." He pulled out his phone, typing notes. She barely slept that first night, despite the comfortable bed, and the silence of the estate. Every sound made her jump. Every shadow seemed threatening. But morning came without incident, sunlight streaming through curtains. Mrs. Kang had opened while delivering breakfast. The elderly woman smiled and spoke cheerfully in Korean, as if Nyla's presence was the most natural thing in the world. Over the following days, a routine emerged. Breakfast in her room, then hours in the library where Jae Hyuk had set up a complete design workstation with software she'd only dreamed of affording. Mrs. Kang brought lunch with maternal insistence, often staying to attempt conversation in broken English, while Nyla practiced equally broken Korean. Dinner was served in the formal dining room where Jae Hyuk sometimes joined her, other times leaving her to eat alone, while he handled business she wasn't allowed to know about. The estate was luxurious, but limiting. Nyla could wander the gardens under guard supervision, swim in the pool while Min Jun stood watch, read any book from the extensive library. What she couldn't do was leave the grounds or contact anyone without approval. The invisible walls were still walls. A week passed, then two. Nyla's anger evolved into something more complex, colored by observations that didn't fit her initial assessment. Jae-hyuk was unfailingly polite, maintaining careful distance, never entering her room without permission. He asked about her work with genuine interest, discussing design theory with surprising knowledge. When she mentioned missing certain foods from home, they appeared at the next meal. When she complained about boredom, he arranged for streaming services and international channels. He was thoughtful in ways that made her uncomfortable because kindness from a captor felt like manipulation, even when it seemed sincere. The first crack in her resistance came on a Tuesday evening. Nyla had been working on a project for a client Jae-hyuk had somehow maintained contact with on her behalf, designing a logo for a restaurant chain. She was deep in the creative flow when music drifted through the halls, something classical with violin and piano that made her pause. Following the sound, she found Jae-hyuk in a room she hadn't explored yet, surrounded by vintage record players and shelves of vinyl. He stood with his back to her, hands in his pockets, just listening. Without his usual guards, without the veneer of control, he looked almost vulnerable. "Vivaldi," he said without turning around. "4 seasons. My mother used to play this constantly." Nyla lingered in the doorway. "Mrs. Kang mentioned she passed away when I was 15. He finally looked at her, and the grief in his expression was raw enough to make her chest ache. She hated this life, tried to shield me from it. When my father died, and I inherited everything, she couldn't bear what I had to become." The admission hung between them, more intimate than any physical contact. Nyla found herself stepping into the room, drawn by the unguarded moment. The ring was hers, the only jewelry she kept from before marrying into this family. She wore it every day until she died. His gaze dropped to where the diamond caught the lamplight on Nyla's finger. "I swore I'd only give it to someone I truly wanted to protect, someone worth the cost." The weight of those words pressed against her ribs. "You don't know me well enough to make that decision. I know you fight. I know you create beauty in a world that often destroys it. I know you're here instead of broken, because when they tried to take you, you didn't stop struggling even when the drugs made you weak." Jae-hyuk's voice dropped lower. "That's enough." Warmth bloomed in her chest, unwanted and undeniable. Nyla forced herself to look away, to remember this man was still her captor, regardless of his reasons. "It's a beautiful piece. It suits you better than it ever suited me sitting in a vault." The moment stretched too long, loaded with unspoken things. Nyla cleared her throat. "I should get back to work." She fled before he could respond, her heart hammering against her ribs. Back in the library, she tried to focus on color palettes and font choices, but her mind kept drifting to the way Jae-hyuk had looked, standing alone with his grief, to the careful way he maintained distance, like he knew his presence was both protection and prison. This was dangerous territory. She couldn't afford to humanize him, couldn't let herself see past the crime lord to the man underneath. That path led to Stockholm Syndrome, to justifying the unjustifiable. But late that night, unable to sleep, Nyla found herself back at the music room door. The lights were off, but she could hear movement inside. Through the gap, she watched Jae-hyuk sitting in shadow, another record playing, his head in his hands, looking so utterly alone that something in her chest cracked. She retreated before he noticed her, but the image haunted her dreams. The next afternoon brought their first real argument. Nyla had been pushing for phone privileges beyond supervised video calls with her family, wanting to contact friends directly. Jae-hyuk refused, citing security concerns. The discussion escalated in the sunroom, voices rising. "You can't keep me completely isolated," Nyla snapped. "That's psychological torture. Better isolated than dead." His control was slipping, jaw tight. "You don't understand how these organizations work. One wrong message, one traced location, and they'll know exactly where to strike. So I'm supposed to trust you completely while you trust me not at all? I trust you. I don't trust the people who want to hurt you to exploit any opening." Jae-hyuk stood abruptly, pacing. "This isn't about control. It's about keeping you alive long enough for this to end." "And when does it end? You keep saying soon, but it's been 2 weeks. These things take time." Convenient answer from the man who benefits from keeping me here. The accusation burst out before Nyla could stop it, fueled by frustration and cabin fever. Jae-hyuk went very still, his expression darkening into something dangerous. When he spoke, his voice was razor quiet. "You think I benefit from this? From having to guard you constantly? From knowing my enemies are watching for any weakness? From being unable to conduct business normally because protecting you requires resources I can't spare? Then let me go." No. The word was absolute. Not until it's safe. They stared at each other across the sunroom, tension crackling between them like static electricity. Nyla's breath came fast and shallow, adrenaline flooding her system. She was acutely aware of how alone they were, of the physical power differential, of the fact that he could enforce his will if he chose. But Jae-hyuk didn't move. Instead, he said, "I'll arrange phone calls with your friends. Supervised, from a secure line, limited to 10 minutes each. That's the best I can offer." The concession surprised her. "Really? You're right that isolation is harmful. I won't compromise your safety, but I can find middle ground." He moved toward the door, paused. "I'm not a hero, Nyla, but I'm not a monster either. Despite what you think, your happiness matters to me." He left before she could formulate a response, and Nyla sank into the nearest chair, feeling unmoored. Every time she built a solid wall of resentment, he did something that complicated the narrative. It would be so much easier if he was straightforwardly evil, instead of this confusing mix of dangerous and thoughtful. True to his word, that evening Min-jun brought her a phone and supervised, while she called her best friend Zara. The 10 minutes flew by, Nyla carefully editing her story to match the family emergency cover. Listening to Zara's voice filled the loneliness. When the call ended, she felt both better and worse, connected, but reminded of everything she was missing. "Thank you," she told Jae-hyuk when she found him later in his office. "For the call." He looked up from paperwork, removing his reading glasses. "You're welcome. Schedule more whenever you need them." The gentleness in his voice did dangerous things to her resolve. Nyla should have left then, should have maintained distance. Instead, she found herself asking, "Why do you wear reading glasses? You're not old enough to need them." A slight smile crossed his face. "Vanity. I should probably get contacts, but I've never gotten around to it." The admission was so normal, so human, that Nyla smiled back before she could stop herself. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Something shifting in the air between them. Then Jae-hyuk's expression shuddered, and he returned to his papers, dismissing her without words. But the moment lingered, following Nyla through the evening and into restless sleep, where she dreamed of dark eyes and careful hands and silk sheets that might have been a prison, or might have been something else entirely. The breaking point came 3 weeks into her captivity, though Nyla had stopped thinking of it in quite those terms. Stockholm Syndrome, she told herself. Self-preservation instinct, making her adapt to impossible circumstances. Not the way her pulse jumped when Jae-hyuk entered a room. Not the way she'd started listening for his footsteps in the hallway outside her door. She was sketching in the garden under afternoon sun when shouting erupted from inside the house. Korean voices raised in anger, then a gunshot that made her drop her pencil. Min-jun appeared instantly, grabbing her arm and pulling her toward the house with urgent force. Inside, now. Don't ask questions. They rushed through corridors while armed men ran in organized chaos. Min-jun shoved her into a windowless room she'd never seen before. Solid metal door, reinforced walls. A panic room. He locked her inside without explanation, and the sudden silence was deafening. Nyla pressed her ear to the door, but heard nothing. Minutes crawled past. Her imagination conjured terrible scenarios. Had the Bake Cartel found her? Was Jae-hyuk hurt? The gunshot kept replaying in her mind, that sharp crack that meant violence and blood. 20 minutes felt like hours before the lock disengaged. Jae-hyuk stood in the doorway, jacket discarded, blood on his white shirt sleeve. Not his blood, she realized with sickening relief. His expression was harder than she'd ever seen it, all the careful gentleness stripped away to reveal the man underneath. "You're safe," he said. "It's handled." Nyla's legs went weak. What happened? A test. They sent someone to probe our defense, see how seriously I meant the protection. He stepped fully into the room, his presence suddenly overwhelming in the small space. The message has been sent. They won't try again soon. Someone died. It wasn't a question. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way violence clung to him like cologne. Someone made a choice and suffered consequences. Jae-hyuk's voice was empty of emotion. That's how this world works. The disconnect between this cold stranger and the man who listened to Vivaldi alone at night made Nyla's head spin. She wanted to recoil, but found herself stepping closer instead, drawn by something she didn't understand. "Are you hurt?" Surprise flickered through his expression before he controlled it. "No, this isn't my blood." She reached for his arm without thinking, fingers brushing the stained fabric. Jae-hyuk went absolutely still, under her touch, every muscle tensing. Their eyes met, and the air turned electric. Nyla became hyper-aware of how close they were standing, of the way his gaze dropped to her mouth, then jerked back up. "You should rest," he said, voice rough. "The danger has passed." But neither of them moved. The space between them felt charged with all the unspoken tension that had been building for weeks. Nyla knew she should step back, should maintain the boundaries that kept this situation survivable. Instead, her hand stayed on his arm, feeling the warmth of him through blood-stained cotton. "I was terrified," she admitted. "When I heard the gunshot, I thought you might be dead, and I don't know why that scared me so much." Jae-hyuk's jaw clenched. Don't what?" "Don't care about me. It makes everything more complicated." The raw honesty in those words cracked something open in her chest. Too late. He moved then, hand coming up to cup her face with devastating gentleness. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, and Nyla's breath caught. They stood frozen in that moment, balanced, on the edge of something neither could take back. She could see the war in his eyes, desire fighting control, want battling propriety. "If I kiss you right now," Jae-hyuk said quietly, "everything changes. You understand that?" Nyla nodded, unable to form words. Her heart hammered so hard she was certain he could hear it. But instead of closing the distance, he dropped his hand and stepped back, breaking the spell. "I can't take that choice from you. Not when you're here, because I forced it." The loss of his touch felt like cold water. Nyla wrapped her arms around herself. "What if I want you to? Ask me again when you're free to leave, and I'll believe you mean it." He moved toward the door, paused with his back to her. "I'll have Mrs. Kang bring dinner to your room. You should avoid the main areas tonight while we clean up." Then he was gone, and Nyla was alone with her racing heart and the phantom heat of his hand against her face. She sank to the floor, head in her hands, trying to understand what was happening to her. This was wrong. He was a criminal who'd kidnapped her, who killed people, who lived in a world of violence and blood. Feeling anything beyond hatred should be impossible. Yet here she was, disappointed he'd walked away. That night Nyla couldn't sleep. She paced her room until past midnight, then ventured into the quiet house, seeking the music room like it might provide answers. Jae-hyuk was there, as she'd somehow known he would be, standing by the window with a glass of amber liquid, still wearing the blood-stained shirt. "Can't sleep either?" she asked from the doorway. He didn't turn around. "Killing gets easier each time. That's what frightens me most." The confession hung heavy between them. Nyla entered the room, maintaining distance but present. Was there another way? Without violence? Not in my world. In my world, hesitation means death. He finally looked at her, and the exhaustion in his face made him look younger, more vulnerable. "I stopped having other options the day my father died, and left me this empire built on fear. Do you want it? This life? What I want stopped mattering a long time ago." Jae-hyuk drained his glass, set it down with controlled precision. "I keep people safe who have nowhere else to turn. I provide justice where the system fails. Tell me that's not worth the cost." "I can't," Nyla admitted, "because I don't know what the cost really is. Everything." The single word carried the weight of years. "It costs everything." They stood in the dim room, jazz playing softly from the record player, and something shifted between them. An understanding, an acceptance of complexity. Nyla crossed to where he stood and did something that surprised them both. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together, saying nothing. Jae-hyuk stared at their joined hands like he'd never seen such a thing before. "You should hate me." "I know, but I don't think I do anymore." His fingers tightened around hers, grip just short of painful. "This is a mistake." "Probably." Nyla met his eyes steadily. "But it's mine to make." The next morning brought unexpected news. Jae-hyuk found her at breakfast, his expression carefully neutral. "The Baek cartel wants to negotiate. They're proposing a meeting to discuss terms." Nyla's stomach dropped. "What kind of terms?" "A truce. They'll leave you alone in exchange for concessions in other territories." He sat across from her, coffee untouched. "It's a good offer. Better than I expected." "So I can leave." The words should have brought relief. Instead, they felt hollow. "In theory. But truces in my world are fragile things. I'd need guarantees, verification, insurance that they'll honor the agreement. Jae-hyuk's gaze was steady on hers. It could take another week or two to finalize. And then I'm free. Yes. Something in his expression looked almost like pain. You can return to your life. Resume everything is interrupted. The prospect should have thrilled her. Instead, Nyla felt a strange panic rising in her chest. Going back meant leaving this strange bubble where she'd somehow found herself caring about a man who embodied everything she should oppose. It meant losing the security of his presence, the way he looked at her like she was precious, the careful dance they'd been doing around undeniable attraction. What if I don't want to leave right away? The question escaped before wisdom could stop it. Jae-hyuk went very still. Don't say things you don't mean. I'm not. Nyla leaned forward, pulse racing. I'm saying I need time to understand what this is between us before I walk away and never see you again. The mask he wore so carefully cracked, revealing raw want underneath. You're asking to stay in a prison. I'm asking for honesty. No more pretending this is just protection. Her voice steadied with conviction. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll leave the moment the truce is signed. Jae-hyuk stood abruptly, pacing like a caged animal. What I feel is irrelevant. You deserve someone who can give you a normal life, not a man covered in blood who'll always put you in danger. Stop deciding what I deserve. Nyla rose to face him. I'm a grown woman making informed choices. Flawed choices, maybe. But mine. He stopped pacing, turned to her with an intensity that stole her breath. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. You understand? My world doesn't do casual. You become mine, and I become someone who will burn everything down to keep you safe. The possessiveness in those words should have terrified her. Instead, heat flooded through her veins. Maybe I want that. They stared at each other across the breakfast room, the air crackling with tension. Nyla could see the moment his control finally shattered. He closed the distance between them in 3 strides, hands coming up to frame her face, giving her one last chance to refuse. She didn't. The kiss was inevitable, desperate. 3 weeks of denial combusting into heat. His mouth claimed hers with barely restrained hunger, and Nyla responded with equal fervor, hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. He kissed like a man starving, like she was oxygen, and he'd been drowning. Deep and demanding, and absolutely consuming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-hyuk pressed his forehead to hers. This is insane. I know. Nyla's fingers traced his jaw, feeling the tension there. Kiss me again anyway. He did. Slower this time, but no less intense. One hand tangled in her hair, while the other splayed across her lower back, holding her against him. Nyla had been kissed before, but never like this. Never with such focused intensity. Like every moment mattered, because it might be the last. A cough from the doorway made them spring apart. Min-jun stood there, looking profoundly uncomfortable, eyes carefully averted. Forgive the interruption, but the negotiators are waiting for your call. Jae-hyuk's jaw clenched with frustration, but his voice came out steady. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. Min-jun disappeared quickly. Jae-hyuk turned back to Nyla, his thumb brushing her swollen lips. We'll continue this conversation later, but understand, If you're choosing this, if you're choosing me, I won't make it easy to walk away." "Good." She smiled despite the chaos in her chest. "I don't want easy." His answering smile was dangerous and beautiful. Then he was gone, leaving her alone with racing thoughts and the taste of him still on her lips. The day passed in surreal slow motion. Nyla tried to work on designs, but her mind kept drifting to that kiss, to the promise implicit in Jae-hyuk's words. She'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross, made a choice that would define everything going forward. Terror and exhilaration warred inside her. Mrs. Kang appeared at lunch with no knowledge in her eyes, saying something in Korean that sounded approving. She patted Nyla's hand and left with a satisfied smile, and somehow that ordinary gesture made everything feel more real. Evening brought Jae-hyuk to her door, freshly showered, wearing casual clothes she'd never seen him in before. Jeans and a simple black sweater that made him look less like a crime lord and more like a dangerously attractive man. "Walk with me," he asked. They strolled through the gardens as dusk painted the sky purple and gold. Guards maintained discreet distance, present but not intrusive. The air smelled like jasmine and possibility. "The negotiations are going well," Jae-hyuk said. "Better than expected. They're eager to avoid prolonged conflict." "That's good." Nyla tried to mean it. "It means you could be free within the week." He stopped walking, turned to face her. "I need you to be certain about this, about us, before that happens. Because once you leave, if you choose to leave, I won't come after you. I won't be another cage you can't escape." The consideration in those words made her throat tight. "And if I stay, if I choose you, then I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of that choice." His hand came up to tuck hair behind her ear, the gesture achingly tender. "I'll dismantle the parts of my empire that put you at risk. I'll build something better, cleaner. I can't promise to be good, Nyla, but I can promise to be better for you." She wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. "That's a lot to give up. You're worth more." The certainty in his voice left no room for doubt. "I've spent my whole life following rules written in blood by dead men. Maybe it's time to write new ones." Nyla reached for his hand, the ring on her finger catching fading light. "Your mother's ring. When did you decide to make it real?" "The moment you didn't run from me, covered in someone else's blood." Jae-hyuk's thumb traced her knuckles. "When you looked at me and saw a person instead of a monster." "I see both," she admitted. "That's what scares me." "Good. You should never stop seeing both." He pulled her closer, arms wrapping around her waist. "I am dangerous, Nyla. I have done terrible things and will likely do more. But with you, I want to try being someone different." She rested her head against his chest, hearing his heartbeat strong and steady. "This is crazy." "Completely insane." His lips brushed her temple. "Stay anyway." They stood like that as darkness fell, wrapped in each other, balanced on the edge of a decision that would define everything. Around them, the estate glowed with lights. Guards patrolled, and somewhere beyond the walls, a dangerous world waited. But in this moment, in this garden, there was just the two of them, and the impossible thing growing between them. Later that night, Nyla couldn't sleep again. She found herself outside Jae-hyuk's bedroom door, heart pounding, knowing this was a point of no return. Before she could knock, the door opened. He stood there shirtless, looking unsurprised to see her. "Can't sleep?" His voice was rough with exhaustion. Too much thinking. She twisted her hands together nervously. Can I stay? Just to sleep. I just don't want to be alone. Something in his expression softened. He stepped aside wordlessly, letting her enter. His room was surprisingly simple, masculine, but not ostentatious. The bed was massive, sheets black silk that whispered when she sat on the edge. Jae-hyuk grabbed a shirt from his closet, pulling it on before joining her. I'll stay on top of the covers. You take the bed. That's not necessary. Yes, it is. He stretched out beside her, maintaining careful distance. Because if I get under those sheets with you right now, sleeping is the last thing that will happen, and you're not ready for that yet. Heat flooded through her at the implication. Nyla turned on her side to face him, studying his profile in the darkness. How do you know what I'm ready for? Because I pay attention. He turned his head, meeting her eyes. I see how you still flinch sometimes when I move too fast. I notice when fear shadows your eyes before trust replaces it. I won't take anything you're not absolutely certain you want to give. The consideration in those words undid her. Nyla reached across the space between them, finding his hand, lacing their fingers together. Thank you. They lay like that, hands joined, not sleeping but not talking either, just existing together in the quiet darkness. At some point, exhaustion claimed them both, and Nyla drifted into the deepest sleep she'd had since arriving at the estate. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. Jae-hyuk sat in a chair by the window, fully dressed, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. When he noticed her awake, he offered a slight smile. Good morning. You snore, by the way. Embarrassment heated her cheeks. I do not. Just a little. It's endearing. Brought her coffee, fixing it exactly how she liked without asking. We have a problem. The shift in his tone made her stomach drop. What kind of problem? The Baek cartel accepted my terms too easily. I'm concerned it's a trap. Jae-hyuk sat on the edge of the bed, expression serious. I need to attend the final negotiation in person to assess their sincerity. It could be dangerous. Fear spiked through her. Then don't go. I have to. Refusing shows weakness, and weakness invites attack. His hand covered hers. But I need you to promise me something. If anything happens, if things go wrong, Min-jun will get you out of Korea. You'll go back to the States, and you'll never look back. No. The word came out fierce. You don't get to make me care about you, then ask me to abandon you. Nyla. Her name was a plea. If they take me, they'll use you to break me. I can't let that happen. Then don't let them take you. She gripped his hand tighter, nails biting into his skin. Come back to me. That's what I need you to promise. The vulnerability in his expression nearly broke her. I'll try. Not good enough. Promise me. Jae-hyuk leaned forward, pressing a kiss to her forehead, with heartbreaking gentleness. I promise to fight like hell, to come back to you. It would have to be enough. The day of the negotiation arrived with oppressive humidity and storm clouds gathering on the horizon. Nyla watched from her bedroom window as Jae-hyuk prepared to leave, surrounded by armed men, checking weapons with clinical efficiency. He looked up as if sensing her gaze, their eyes meeting across the distance. Even from here, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he carried violence like a second skin. Mrs. Kang entered with tea, speaking softly in Korean. Nyla had learned enough to understand the essence. He will return. He always does. But the elderly woman's eyes held worry that her words tried to hide. The hours crawled past with agonizing slowness. Nyla tried to work, but her hands shook too badly to sketch. She attempted reading but couldn't focus beyond a single paragraph. Min-jun checked on her twice, his usual professional mask slipping to reveal genuine concern. The entire estate felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for news that could change everything. Afternoon bled into evening. Still no word. Nyla paced the music room, Vivaldi playing softly because it made her feel closer to Jae-hyuk somehow. She touched the spines of his record collection, imagining his hands selecting each one, building this private sanctuary away from the blood and chaos. Her phone sat silent on the table. No messages, no calls, nothing but terrible waiting. When footsteps sounded in the hallway, her heart leaped. But it was only Min-jun, his expression grim in a way that made her blood run cold. "What happened?" Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "There was an ambush. The Beck cartel never intended to negotiate. They wanted to eliminate Mr. Han in neutral territory." Min-jun's jaw clenched. "We have casualties. He's alive, but the situation is deteriorating quickly." Relief and terror crashed through her simultaneously. "Where is he?" "On his way back. But the cartel knows he's wounded, and they're pressing the advantage. They've mobilized everything for a final assault on the estate." Min-jun moved toward her with purpose. "We need to get you to the safe house immediately." "No!" Nyla stepped back. "I'm not leaving him." "Miss Brooks, please be reasonable. If they breach our defenses, you become a liability. He'll die trying to protect." "Then make sure they don't breach them." She crossed her arms, anchoring herself. "I'm not running while he's bleeding because of me." Min-jun looked like he wanted to argue, but voices erupted outside, shouting in Korean. He cursed under his breath. "Stay in this room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Mr. Han." Then he was gone, and Nyla was alone with fear clawing at her throat. She locked the door as instructed, then grabbed the heaviest object she could find, a marble bookend, holding it like a weapon. Her design skills hadn't prepared her for combat, but survival instinct was a powerful teacher. Gunfire erupted in the distance, sharp cracks followed by the deeper boom of something heavier. Nyla's grip on the bookend tightened until her knuckles went white. She thought about Jae-hyuk wounded somewhere, about the promises they'd made in darkness, about a future that might die tonight before it had a chance to begin. The lights went out suddenly, plunging the house into darkness cut only by emergency lighting that painted everything in eerie red. Nyla's breath came in short gasps. More gunfire, closer now. Breaking glass. Shouting in Korean and English. The sounds of war brought directly to the doorstep. Something slammed against the music room door, and Nyla nearly screamed. She raised the bookend, prepared to fight. But then she heard his voice. "Nyla, it's me. Open the door." Her hands fumbled with the lock. Jae-hyuk stumbled inside, supported by one of his men. Blood soaking through his jacket from a wound high on his left shoulder. His face was pale, but his eyes were fierce, burning with determination that defied the injury. "You're supposed to be at the safe house," he said through gritted teeth. "And you're supposed to not get shot." Nyla helped him to the couch, her hands shaking as she applied pressure to the wound. "How bad is it?" "Through and through. I'll survive." He caught her wrist, his grip weak but insistent. "But you need to leave now. They're inside the perimeter." "I already told Min-jun no." She grabbed a decorative cloth from a nearby table, using it to bind the wound tighter. If you wanted someone who runs when things get hard, you chose wrong. Despite everything, Jae-hyuk smiled. Stubborn woman. You have no idea. Nyla finished the makeshift bandage, then cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. Tell me what to do to help. The vulnerability in his expression nearly destroyed her. Here was a man who'd built an empire on control, reduced to accepting help because pride would get them both killed. The panic room. There's a weapons cache and a communication system that can call for reinforcements from allied organizations. Show me. They moved through darkened hallways, Jae-hyuk leaning heavily on her, leaving a trail of blood that made Nyla's stomach turn. His man, whose name she learned was Taeyang, scouted ahead with his weapon raised. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every sound might be the last they heard. The panic room door stood open. The lock shot out. Inside, two bodies in Bayek cartel colors lay sprawled across the floor. Taeyang checked them quickly, nodded. Clear, but they found it. Check what they took, Jae-hyuk ordered, sliding down the wall to sit. His breathing had gone shallow, skin clammy with shock setting in. Nyla knelt beside him, pressing her hand over his, maintaining pressure on the wound. Stay with me. You promised to come back, and I'm holding you to that. Technically, I did come back. His attempt at humor was weak but present, just a little worse for wear. This isn't funny. Tears burned her eyes. You're bleeding all over a very nice floor, and I don't know how to fix this. You're here. That's fixing more than you know. His free hand came up to her face, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I'm sorry I brought this into your life. Stop apologizing and stay alive. She pressed a fierce kiss to his lips, tasting copper and desperation. We have things to do, remember? New rules to write. Taeyang interrupted with news that the communication system was damaged, but the weapons cache was intact. He distributed guns with practiced efficiency, showing Nyla how to hold one, where the safety was, how to aim. She'd never touched a weapon before, and the weight felt wrong in her hands, too heavy with potential death. I can't shoot someone, she whispered. Then shoot near them. Jae-hyuk's voice had steadied slightly, drawing on reserves of strength she didn't know existed. Make noise. Create hesitation. That's all we need. The next hour became a blur of tension and terror. They barricaded themselves in the panic room, while outside the sounds of fighting intensified. Taeyang communicated with the remaining guards via radio, coordinating defense, calling targets. Jae-hyuk directed strategy despite his injury, his mind sharp even as his body weakened. Nyla stayed pressed against his side, gun in hand, praying she wouldn't have to use it. She'd never been religious, but she found herself making bargains with any god who might listen. Let him survive this, and I'll walk away if that's what keeps him safe. Let him survive, and I'll never ask for anything again. The door shook under impact. Once, twice, 3 times before the lock began to give way. Taeyang positioned himself in front of them, weapon raised, prepared to be the last line of defense. Nyla raised her gun with trembling hands, clicked off the safety like he'd shown her, and made a choice. If they came through that door, she would fight. The explosion that followed wasn't inside the room, but somewhere above them, shaking the foundation. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then silence, terrible and complete, broken only by their breathing and the ringing in Nyla's ears. Taeyong's radio crackled to life. Rapid Korean, tone urgent, but something in it had changed. He responded, then turned to Jae-hyuk with visible relief. Reinforcements arrived. The Kim syndicate honored the alliance. They're pushing the cartel back. Jae-hyuk's exhale was shaky with relief and blood loss. How many did we lose? Too many. But we held. Taeyong moved to the door, listening. Medical teams are setting up in the main hall. Getting Jae-hyuk there became an ordeal. His strength was fading fast, consciousness slipping as blood loss took its toll. Nyla and Taeyong supported him between them, moving through hallways now lit with emergency lights and filled with organized chaos. Men shouted instructions. Wounded were being treated. Bodies were covered with sheets. The scope of violence stole Nyla's breath. This was the reality of Jae-hyuk's world, the cost she'd only understood theoretically until now. Blood on marble floors, bullet holes in walls, shattered glass crunching under their feet. All of this because he'd chosen to protect her. Medical personnel swarmed them immediately. A doctor cut away Jae-hyuk's jacket and shirt, revealing the wound that looked worse exposed to light. Nyla tried to stay close, but was gently pushed aside as they worked, inserting IVs, administering medication, beginning emergency treatment. Mrs. Kang appeared and wrapped a blanket around Nyla's shoulders. The elderly woman's face was streaked with tears, but her hands were steady as she guided Nyla to a chair. They sat together in silence, watching the organized chaos, waiting to learn if Jae-hyuk would survive the night. Dawn arrived with pale light that felt obscene after such darkness. The doctor approached Nyla with exhaustion etched into every line of his face. The surgery was successful. The bullet missed major arteries, but he's lost significant blood. The next 24 hours are critical. Relief made her knees weak. Can I see him? He's asking for you. The doctor's slight smile suggested this was no surprise. Keep him calm. Agitation will slow healing. Jae-hyuk looked smaller in the hospital bed they'd set up in his room, hooked to monitors that beeped steady reassurance. His eyes were closed but opened when she took his hand. The smile he managed was weak, but genuine. You're still here, he said, voice rough from anesthesia. Where else would I be? Nyla settled into the chair beside the bed, bringing his hand to her lips. You scared me half to death. Sorry, wasn't the plan. His thumb stroked her knuckles weakly. The Beck cartel is finished. The Kim syndicate made sure of that. You're safe now. The words should have brought relief. Instead, they opened the door to a decision she'd been avoiding. So, I can leave. Something painful crossed his expression. If that's what you want, I promise not to be another cage. Nyla thought about her apartment waiting across the city, her friends who didn't know the truth, the normal life she could reclaim with effort. Then she thought about waking next to this complicated, dangerous, surprisingly gentle man, about the way he listened to Vivaldi alone because his mother used to play it, about how he'd built her a design studio so she wouldn't lose herself in his world. What if I want to stay? The question emerged softer than intended. Not as a prisoner or someone being protected, as a partner who chooses this with open eyes. Jae-hyuk's grip on her hand tightened marginally. You've seen the worst of my world now. The blood, the violence, the cost. You still want this? I want you. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. The whole complicated, dangerous, impossible package. I want to help you build something better. I want to be someone who stands beside you, not behind you. Tears gathered in his eyes, shocking her. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not." She smiled through her own tears. "But you're stuck with me anyway." He pulled her closer despite the pain it must have caused, until their foreheads touched. "I'll spend my life trying to be worthy of this choice. Start by healing. Everything else we'll figure out together." The kiss was soft, careful of his injuries, but carried the weight of promises made in blood and darkness. When they parted, Jae-hyuk's expression held something she'd never seen before. Hope. The next weeks were a strange period of transition and healing. Jae-hyuk recovered slowly, his body mending, while he began the harder work of dismantling the parts of his empire built on cruelty. Meetings with lieutenants happened at his bedside, Nyla present for many, learning the intricate politics that governed the underworld. She discovered that his organization did more good than she'd realized. Protection for businesses, the police ignored. Justice for victims, the system failed. Resources for communities abandoned by legitimate society. It wasn't clean, would never be clean, but it wasn't purely evil either. Gradually, they found a rhythm. Nyla returned to her design work, taking on projects that could be done remotely while staying at the estate. Her friends were told the truth, or a version of it, met with skepticism, but eventual acceptance when they saw how she glowed talking about him. Her family was harder, their concern justified, but Jae-hyuk won them over with patience and obvious devotion to their daughter. 3 months after the attack, Jae-hyuk called her to the music room where they'd first begun to understand each other. He stood by the record player, Vivaldi playing softly, and in his hand was a ring box. "Wait," Nyla stopped him before he could open it. "If there's a giant diamond in there, I'm going to be upset." Surprise crossed his face. "Why?" "Because your mother's ring already means everything. I don't need something new and expensive. I need something that represents us, not your ability to buy things." Jae-hyuk laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Open it and see." Inside was a simple band, white gold, with a single small diamond surrounded by black stones. Understated, elegant, nothing like the ostentatious piece she'd woken wearing months ago. "I had the original diamond from my mother's ring set into something made for you alone," he explained. "The black stones represent everything dark you've accepted about me. But the diamond remains, catching light even in shadow." Tears blurred her vision. "It's perfect." He took her left hand, carefully removing his mother's ring, then replaced it with the new one. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her finger specifically. "Marry me. Not because you're trapped or scared or trying to survive. Marry me because you choose this life, this man, this future we'll build together." "Yes." The word came without hesitation. To all of it. Always yes. The kiss that followed was deep and sure, celebration and promise combined. Around them the music swelled, and for the first time since waking in a stranger's bed, Nyla felt completely certain of where she belonged. Their wedding happened 6 months later, a small ceremony in the estate gardens under cherry blossoms in full bloom. Nyla's family attended with cautious support, won over by Jae-hyuk's obvious love and commitment to building something legitimate. His organization attended in force, men who'd kill for him standing witness as he vowed to forsake violence when possible and choose love when available. Mrs. Kang cried through the entire ceremony, proud as any mother. Min Jun served as best man, his usual stoic expression cracking into genuine happiness. And when the officiant pronounced them married, the cheer that went up from the assembled crowd suggested that even in the underworld, love could be cause for celebration. The reception blurred into toasts and dancing, and moments stolen in corners, where Jae-hyuk whispered promises that made her blush. They left early, escaping to a private house on the coast, where the next 3 days belonged only to them. On their wedding night, with moonlight streaming through open windows and the sound of waves providing rhythm, they finally claimed each other completely. It was tender and passionate and overwhelming, the culmination of months of tension and denial and choosing each other despite impossible odds. Afterward, wrapped in each other, Jae-hyuk traced the ring on her finger. No regrets, not even one. Nyla kissed his shoulder, his neck, his jaw. You? Only that I didn't find you sooner. His arms tightened around her, that we wasted time on fear and hesitation. We needed that time to understand what we were choosing. Maybe. He turned to face her fully, expression serious. I meant what I said about building something better. I've begun transferring resources into legitimate businesses, community programs, protection services that operate within legal frameworks. It'll take years to transition completely, but I'm committed. I know you are. She believed him absolutely, and I'll be with you through all of it. They made love again as dawn painted the sky gold and pink, slower this time, learning each other with patient devotion. Nyla had never imagined her life could contain such intensity, such depth of feeling, such absolute certainty that despite the unconventional beginning, this was exactly where she belonged. A year later, Nyla stood in their home, now a restored traditional Korean house that balanced history with modern comfort, one hand resting on her swollen belly. 7 months pregnant with a daughter who kicked constantly, she reviewed designs for a community center Jae-hyuk was funding in a neighborhood previously controlled by hostile elements. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Jae-hyuk had kept his promise, methodically dismantling the violent aspects of his empire while building legitimate alternatives. There were still enemies, still threats, still nights when he came home with blood on his hands. But they were becoming less frequent as his reputation shifted from feared crime lord to complicated businessman operating in gray areas. Nyla had built her own success, her design firm now internationally recognized, her story, though edited, inspiring others to take chances on unconventional paths. She'd learned to navigate her husband's world without losing herself, maintaining boundaries while accepting the reality of what his past required. Their daughter would be born into something better than what they'd inherited. Not perfect, never perfectly safe, but intentional in a way their own beginnings hadn't been. Jae-hyuk arrived home as sunset painted the windows gold, immediately coming to wrap his arms around her from behind, hands settling over hers on her belly. Their daughter kicked in response to his presence, always more active when her father was near. "How are my girls?" he asked against her neck. "Plotting world domination." Nyla leaned back into his warmth. "Your daughter is definitely your child. Very determined, very stubborn. She gets that from both of us." He turned her in his arms, expression soft with love that still sometimes took her breath away. "I love you. I don't say it enough, but I do. Every day more than the last." "I know." She kissed him slowly, savoring the moment of peace. And I love you. All of you. Even the parts that scare me sometimes. They stood together as darkness fell. Two people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, threats, moments when the darkness of his past reached for their future. But they would face it together, bound by choice instead of circumstance, by love that had been tested in blood and shadow and emerged stronger for the trials. Nyla had woken in a stranger's bed, wearing a dead woman's ring, terrified and lost. Now she stood in her own home, married to a man who'd proven that even the darkest souls could choose light when given reason. Their daughter kicked again, strong and insistent, demanding attention. Jae-hyuk knelt and pressed a kiss to Nyla's belly, speaking softly in Korean. Promises to their unborn child about the world they were building for her. And watching him, this complicated, dangerous, devoted man who'd saved her, then given her the freedom to save herself, Nyla knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Not the easy choice, not the safe choice, but the right one. Because some love stories begin in darkness, and if you're brave enough, strong enough, stubborn enough to fight for light, sometimes the darkness transforms into something that can hold both shadow and sun, danger and devotion, fear and the kind of love that changes everything. Sometimes waking up in a stranger's bed changes everything. Nyla walked into that night looking for connection, and walked out into a world of danger, protection, and a love she never imagined possible. Jae-hyuk's world was built on blood and control until one brave woman showed him that even the darkest souls can choose light when given a reason. They risked everything for each other. Safety, sanity, the comfort of normal lives. And in the end, they proved that love forged in shadows can be just as real as love found in sunlight. Maybe even stronger because it survives the darkness. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe to help this channel reach 1,000 subscribers. Your support means everything. Now I want to hear from you. Could you ever fall for someone from a dangerous world like Jae-hyuk's? Would you have stayed and fought alongside him, or chosen safety and walked away when you had the chance? And honestly, do you believe people can truly change for love, or is the past too powerful to escape? Drop your answers in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing your thoughts. Also, where in the world are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for being here and riding every dangerous twist and emotional turn of Nyla and Jae-hyuk's love story. I'll see you in the next story, and trust me, it's going to pull at your heartstrings just as much. Until then, remember that sometimes the most terrifying beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings, and the right person will always be worth choosing, even when the choice seems impossible.